you, everyone, and good evening to our special council meeting at 7:34 p.m. on the 25th of March 2021, Thursday. I'd like to start by just apologising to a small group of people here from Bentley who were going to be here for the AGM, but unfortunately our front doors were locked and they didn't quite make it into the meeting. So I'd like to acknowledge their presence, thank them very much for coming down this evening, and we will make it up to you at some stage. But I unreservedly apologise, and that apology will now be published in the minutes of this meeting. So thanks for coming along. At item 1, I'd like to declare the special council meeting open again. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land. We also pay our respects, of course, to elders, both past and present. Can I just ask anyone present this evening to turn off all electronic devices, especially mobile phones, iPads and tablets, for the duration of the meeting? Tonight's council meeting is being recorded. A copy of the audio recording shall be available on the city's website within 72 hours of the meeting, hopefully a little bit earlier than that, and the remainder of the disclaimer can now be seen on the screen. As far as attendances tonight, we have apologies from our Deputy Mayor and also from Councillor Ben Kunza, I nearly said Ken Bunza, who are not able to be here this evening. Approved leave of absence, we have none. Our disclosures of interest, I do have a disclosure of interest here. I'll invite any other councillors to make them if they see fit. This is from Councillor Lindsay Holland. It's in relation to report OC 003 of 21 part 4. It's in relation to the endorsement of the CEO position description. I'll get the councillor to actually read out his conflict, disclosure of conflict when that matter comes up a little bit later in the meeting. And that's the only declaration I have. Councillor Ponaturai.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might also complete a form which I have declared, I think, that 2 meetings ago regarding the Lester Blades have recruited me in a board position. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just ask for governance to provide Councillor Ponaturai. For the record, she has just spoken about the perceived conflict, and Councillor, I'll get you, take your time, I'll get you to read that disclaimer out once that declaration out once we commence that item. At item 4, question time for the public. The time set aside is 15 minutes. Questions in regards to tonight's meeting must be in relation to items on the agenda for tonight. We only have 5 people here in the meetings. Anyone got any questions before we move on in relation to tonight's agenda? No, thank you very much. At item, I'll just go straight to the Office of the CEO at item 6.1. We're going to deal with this matter first, and that's OC 003 of 21. CEO, I expect that you'll be leaving the room for that item.
I don't know why, but anyway, I'm happy to leave.
I'm not certain whether you're required to leave. I don't think we're talking about anything that's actually confidential about a contract. I don't have any issue with the CEO staying in the room. We're only talking about his JDF. It's actually a public meeting, so it's not a confidential matter. We've got members of the public here hearing it, so it's actually going to be available on our public audio on our website. So I don't see any issue why the CEO would need to leave, considering that this is about a JDF for the next CEO. So we have OC 003 of 21, the endorsement of the Chief Executive Officer position description. I will ask for a mover, please, in relation to that matter. That will be Councillor Holland. Thank you, Councillor Holland. I'm going to get you to read your... You're going to leave the room. Well, I ask for a mover, you put your hand up, so... You can certainly stay in the room. There's absolutely no issue with you staying... If you move it, then you need to speak in favour of it, so you won't move it? Okay, so can I ask for a mover? Mover, Councillor Porter will be the mover for the matter, and a seconder, Councillor Spencer Teo. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask for...
He's asked his particular financial interest, then he can't be in the room.
He's going to leave the room in any case, but it's actually a matter of him. Excuse me just one moment. Councillor Holland, I'll just return your disclosure form to you, just so you can read it to the meeting and understand that you will be leaving the meeting. But please go ahead.
Yes, I'm just clearing. I thought it was a disclosure of interest for financial indirect from the information that I read, that it's an indirect, it's a real funny one, this indirect financial type of interest, purely because my daughter works for Jackson McDonald, and if we appoint Jackson McDonald, we're giving them money and therefore paying my daughter. So I think that's the right conflict. You agree, Mr. Kane? Okay, that's all, because my daughter works there, that's as
Yeah, and I think too, I think you did right, but I think at the end of the day, some of this is left up to councillors to make those own judgment calls.
And my judgment call will be to walk out.
I could hear Councillor Director Kane here on the side, so I'm fine with that. Councillor, for the sake of the record, Councillor Holland will be leaving the room during debate. Thank you, Councillor Holland. Yes, Councillor Holland.
If I could make a request because of that, I think I would like to suggest that we vote on these individually, otherwise I'll have to walk out in the whole lot.
I have no issue with that, if that's what you're requesting. I have no problem with us addressing these matters on a vote one by one.
Can we do 1 to 3 and then 4 separately?
Okay, let's do 1 to 3 on block, and then we will do 4 separately. Okay, thank you very much, councillors. So we have a mover being Councillor Porter.
Needs to also declare her interest.
Councillor Ponaturo, have you finished the form?
Yeah.
Would you like to read it to the meeting, please?
I'm happy to say that.
She can't be here for debate. No. Councillor Holland, just hold on for a moment. We're just having a look at standing orders and referring. We might have to refer to the Act. The advice from governance is, even though we're going to actually vote on these individually, nevertheless the Act actually says if you declare a financial interest in an item, and the item obviously would be in its totality, that you would need to leave the room during debate on that item. So I get what you're saying, but that will have to... We're thinking it probably is, for all the reasons outlined by you. Director Kane, can I get you? I can hear you nodding, but you don't have your microphone on, so the question's been asked.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, it's the correct declaration in that the councillor has noted, given the proximity of the relationship of his daughter and the city providing funds directly to Jackson McDonald and indirectly potentially to her salary, then there is a financial interest there.
Then wouldn't the financial interest only be relevant to number 4? It's not relevant to the other 3.
I think the Act actually says that it talks about the item, not the individual parts of the item. So you need to leave the room. I will ask for governance. Have we got a copy of the standing of the Local Government Act? Do you need to refer to it? You happy with that? Yeah, okay. I appreciate your cooperation on that, and I thank you very much for your declaration. I'll just go to Councillor Ponaturo and then I'll come back to Councillor Sweeney. Councillor Ponaturo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You can go up. You can go upstairs. You can go upstairs, and we'll call you back after this item's finished. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a disclosure of interest form. I've just completed this. Lester Blades have recruited me in one of my current board position, which I hold at the HSS board currently. I'm also having a query because I do get paid there too in the board. So in that case, can I stay here or should I be leaving? It's unrelated.
No, we had a similar situation last week at our last meeting with Councillor Sabiri in relation to paid board payments. So can I ask governance, did you actually hear the explanation from Councillor Ponaturo?
Sorry, I didn't hear it in its total.
Councillor Ponaturo, can you explain the situation again? Okay. I don't have the form in front of me, so...
All right. So I was recruited by Lester Blades. They were one of the agents were going through the health department for the HSS board position. So I was recruited and I'm currently on that board member. And of course I'm paid on the board as well. So I'm declaring as an impartiality here, but I'm also getting paid. But because number of us, we sit in number of boards and we meet number of consultants, including all the big four firms. But I'm wondering whether can I just say impartiality and being part of the decision making, or should I be?
I think just to answer your question, I think, and Director Kane, I might ask for your advice on this. My belief is it's up to councillors to actually understand their conflicts and to fully understand those before we come to the meeting. It's up to you to declare it. If you make a declaration on impartiality, it's later found to have been as an example, a financial interest, which would have precluded you from the meeting. You would then actually be in breach of the Local Government Act. So, it's a serious matter to declare a financial interest. Failing to do so is an even more serious matter. So if you're not absolutely certain, but that is on you. Governance, your advice there? Oh, hang on. I'll defer to the CEO in the first instance. CEO.
Councillor, of course it's up to you to declare whatever it is, but ultimately the fact that you're paid by the board has absolutely nothing to do with your role in this council. The board on which you are representing has no involvement in the recruitment of the CEO to this organisation. The declaration pertains to the fact that Lester Blades were involved in your recruitment or your selection to a board. That would be just an impartiality at best. But that has absolutely nothing to do. The decision's already taken for Lester Blades to manage this process. You've already declared that at a previous meeting. There's no need to declare it at this meeting, but it's really up to you. And if it is, it's just impartiality.
And I do note that you have actually declared the same a declaration of conflict at a previous meeting, so you've done everything available to you to make us fully aware of a perceived conflict, and I tend to agree with the CEO. In this instance, it would be impartiality, so I'm happy to accept that if that's what you'd like to do. Okay, so that'll be a declaration of impartiality from Councillor Ponaturai. Thank you. I'll just get governance to pick that up from you. Thank you. So, Councillor Porter, I'll ask you, have you got anything to add in relation to this matter? Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, so just talking in support of this motion, it's clear there's been a lot of work that's gone into this, so I ask my fellow councillors to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo, anything to add?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Mr Mayor,
sorry, Councillor Sweeney, my apologies, I forgot to get back to you. Councillor Sweeney?
Sorry, if we just take things back just a minute. I've just got a very quick question about the conflict of interest, particularly in regards to Councillor Holland. I just wanted to know whether or not, how does his declaration of conflict of interest, which we've just heard, how does that impact on his involvement now with the rest of the process? Does that have any impact at all? Will it have any impact at all?
You're talking about the CEO selection process?
Yeah.
That might be something we might want to take offline and get an opinion from. Karen Cornish, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to add, in Councillor Holland's case, it wasn't so much that he had the interest, but a person closely associated with him has the interest. So his daughter is regarded as a closely associated person, so she has the interest, and because of that relationship, it then implies that he has the interest.
The question being that for the process going forward after tonight, for the remainder of the CEO selection process, would the same conflict preclude Councillor Holland from the process on the basis of his declaration tonight? I think that was the question.
Not necessarily so, depending upon the decision that Council is being asked to make. It depends on that recommendation as to whether this particular company is involved in the recommendation. So I couldn't answer that categorically. It depends on the decision that Council is being asked to make.
We'll talk to Councillor Holland and we'll ask him to make those inquiries with governance, and I'm sure they'll sort that out.
Yeah, I think it's very important, because Councillor Holland has declared that he certainly does want involvement with the selection process on the panel. I don't think he is quite aware that what he has declared tonight could eliminate him from further involvement in the process, and I think he should be probably made aware of that. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Spencer-Teo, you've got nothing else to add? Sorry. Does anyone else like to speak? Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And just following on from that, in point 3, Mr Gary Martin, has he been asked if he would accept the appointment as the independent advisor?
Director Kane. No. Oh, sorry, CEO.
So my understanding is Dr. Martin has been requested, has been informed or has been asked if he's prepared to be the independent candidate or independent member of the selection panel. Yes.
And unfortunately,
Councillor Barry?
the question that then follows, given the tone of what we've just had, I mean, I asked a question the other week, and I note there was an email today. The fact that the city has done business with AIM, is that in any way conflicted?
CEO.
It's unfortunate that I haven't seen the email that I've drafted back to that person who's written an email with her very extensive experience in recruitment of CEOs. The answer is we have an interest in common, or with AIM has an interest in common with every local government and every organisation that undertakes training through AIM. So there is no conflict of interest because we are dealing with the organisation. And as I said, it's an interest in common with every local government in WA. So there's no conflict by my account.
Okay, so
Thank you, Councillor.
Apart from that, I'd like to move an amendment.
What would be the amendment?
And the amendment would be in 4. Replace the 4 that's there with that council, the CEO selection panel, shall select the legal firm to assist in reviewing the CEO employment contract from a selection of at least 3 applicants suitably qualified in workplace relations and employment. This will occur at a subsequent meeting of the selection panel and Lester Blades.
Have you provided that to...
No, I haven't. But it's an amendment for tonight. Is it in order?
It's in order, but we're just going to have to pause the meeting while we catch up to it. I always make the point that we've had sufficient time to provide these amendments to staff so that we don't actually hold up these meetings.
I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, but it has happened on numerous occasions anyway, so...
Yeah, it has, but you've gone to the trouble of writing it out. You could have just typed it out and sent it to governance, and then it'd be on the screen right now, so...
Very busy this afternoon, Mr Mayor, very busy. I'll keep it as short as I can.
Just have a seat for a moment while we get it up on the screen. Just while we're waiting, Councillor Sweeney's got a question. Councillor Sweeney?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Just on this whole question around independence and this person, Jeff Martin, and I'm not quite sure what if this person has a connection of some type or has previously had a connection through training or some other aspect, but I think in accordance with what I'm reading and what I've read under the local government regulations, it's not just the connection that we need to look at, it's from people outside looking in. And
can I just stop you right there? Look, you're actually debating the motion. You need to ask a question.
That was my question.
What's the question?
My question is that it's on the perception of bias. That's what it says in the Act. Are we considering that part of the Act when we determine whether or not somebody is independent or not?
Yeah, I think the matter was raised and has been addressed by the CEO in writing and again tonight. I think we're dealing with the person, not with the organisation. So the City of Canning deals with the organisation. This is a person involved in the organisation, but he's also worked at leading universities. He's a professor, has worked, as many of us, wide-ranging fields across a number of sectors, and it would be very hard for a council as large as the City of Canning to really find, I'm sure we could find one, but to find a person who has not either directly or indirectly had any context in a business sense with the City of Canning. I mean, so this person has come highly recommended. He, at the end of the day...
Yeah, I'm not questioning his qualification at all.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that it's the council that will choose the CEO, not the independent person. He's an observer just to make sure that the governance of that process is completed. So he will sit there and, when required, as an independent person, but it is the council that will have the decision and will influence the outcome. We choose the CEO, not the independent person. He's just a person that's put on there to independently overview the governance of the selection panel.
And just leading on from that then, was there any other, was there a list of independents? Did Lester Blades consider anyone else on that list, or was he the only person?
CEO.
Lester Blades, and we have Mr. Blades, one of the principal partners in the gallery. Lester Blades is a very experienced organisation, or people within a very experienced, and they have a list of independent people that they can go to in matters like this. So that's a choice that Mr. Blades has made, probably with his colleagues in the firm, and we have to be guided by our recruitment consultant as to the credibility of the person they're recommending as independent. And I mean, I'm not sure I can add anything else to it other than this person is of very high standing and reputation. So I'm not sure where the issues are with Mr. Martin or Professor Martin, but I've answered what I can.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just so for clarity, my question isn't surrounding his qualification at all. I'm very well aware of his qualifications. He's well qualified for the job. My question is just as a result of what I heard earlier about an association or connection and the independence of bias perceptions, those sort of things that come into play when we choose an independent person to sit on the panel. That's what I was trying to look at.
Yeah, agreed. But at the end of the day, this is look, we've got members of the public here witnessing tonight's meeting. This is a public, not a private, not a confidential meeting. We will be speaking openly and transparently tonight on the matter. Mr. Martin has been named in the publication tonight, so his bona fides are also listed in there. The city's CEO has also declared that he sees no conflict of interest here. So I think on that basis, we just need to move forward on this tonight. I hear your question, but I think it's been satisfactorily answered, and that'll be a decision of council, I believe. How are we going with that amendment at the moment? Governance? Ms. Cornish, can I just ask how we're going with the amendment? Is that it? Councillor Barry, these are the issues that arise when, without running this past any member of the administration, you come up with a 12th hour amendment to a really serious matter that we're discussing tonight. I'm reading it myself. I can hear the talk in the background that council shall select a legal firm. That would mean that council will need to have a selection panel to come up with a list ourselves. I don't think we're suitably qualified to do that. I mean, that's the role of the administration, I would feel. Director Kane, I've got you over there. I can hear you in the background. But the way this is worded just makes no sense to me, and I think it's outside of the remit of council. But I'll ask for your advice, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, unfortunately, Councillor Barry, you're seeking to try and put council in the role of the administration, where then council would have to make a determination based on its own views on the suitability of a particular law firm. It would have to do all of the administrative work then to assess and put forward a recommendation to itself, which council can't do. I just wonder, is the issue around this one you're concerned about the firm Jackson McDonald, and the conflict that Councillor Holland is in? And if so, as a suggestion, then the CEO could nominate a different law firm, if that's the concern, to provide that same advice.
My own opinion on that, I'll come to Councillor Barry, is that with Councillor Holland out of the room, for all we know, his daughter formerly worked for the next law firm that you nominate, or you'll nominate a law firm that one of us has had dealings with. So, where do we go with this? Councillor Holland's declared an interest. He's left the room of his own volition, and I'm not so certain that would need to be, this council itself needs to be selecting a legal firm.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think you're actually debating it as well. The point is that I don't have a problem with Jackson McDonald if they were one of the three, but maybe because Lester Blades' representative is here, we may, if we can, ask them, seeing we're debating it amongst ourselves before it's even seconded, if that is the normal case. And if I can get a seconder, I'll speak very, very shortly to it.
Yeah, I think my role here, though, is to rule that the amendment is actually, I'll take a moment to have a look at it, but my role here in relation to the amendment is to make sure that it meets the parameters of the... Can I just ask you, give me a moment, Councillor Barry, since you've raised this, we'll just keep working our way through this. Can I ask for your cooperation on this? I think what we might do is withdraw item 4 from the agenda tonight and ask for a report from administration, which will include options there. Otherwise, I'd ask for a ruling from governance. I'll make the ruling myself in relation to whether the amendment may in fact negate the intent, because the intent at the moment is to simply note McDonald, that law firm. If we're going to then not note them and note somebody completely different or a whole range of people, in my mind it may mean that it might negate that. So I think probably the best course of action, I know what your intent of your amendment is to perhaps remove that from the agenda tonight and come back to... Director Kane, can I ask for your advice on that? So it would be a report back to council, because we don't need to deal with this tonight. That'll be the last piece of this process. We're only dealing with the JDF tonight, so maybe we keep our powder dry on this one and come back. Can I just ask, though, when you say remove item 4, what would be the solution there? You would be proposing what? Can I get you to use your microphone? Oh, CEO?
The option, sorry, not the option, the subsequent action would be that we would provide a report back to council on the recommendation of a legal firm to undertake the review and advise on the contract of employment. It's nothing that needs to be done immediately. This will be a process that we go through, and at the end of the process there will be a contract of employment that will be offered to the prospective CEO. So we can do that at a subsequent meeting, Mr. Mayor. No need to rush any changes through in this meeting. So therefore withdrawing it seems to be a sensible course of action.
Councillor Barry, you okay with that?
I'm happy to accept that, and then we can work on me getting something to governance in the meantime as well. Thank you.
Terrific. Okay, thank you very much for that.
Through the Mayor, can I confirm by removing part 4,
Just,
you're doing that as an amendment?
We'll be removing...
That will be Councillor Barry's amendment. Can I confirm that?
Councillor Barry, that'll be amendment would be to remove section 4, item 4. Are you okay with that? And we will need a seconder for that. Would be Councillor Ponaturai has seconded it. And Councillor Barry, with your indulgence, I don't think there's any need to speak to the amendment. The matter's been recorded, so you okay with that? We'll just move on with it. Yeah, that's right.
Just a quick question.
So we'll deal with the... Councillor Ponaturai?
In that case, can we have Councillor Holland back again?
Well, Do you know what? I'm not absolutely certain on that because, and look, it'll make no difference to tonight, I wouldn't think. But Councillor Holland has declared a financial interest, so even though he has, we've now commenced debate. Because debate has been commenced, I don't think there's anything in the standing orders to allow me to call him back to the meeting during debate and reinstate him to the meeting. So that would be my ruling on that. But thank you for raising it. I think you're right. Can we just? Are you right with the amendment? Councillor Barry moved an amendment to remove Part 4 of the officer recommendation. Governance, we'll leave that as it is at the moment. I think that's fine. It's been seconded by Councillor Ponaturai. Councillor Barry will not be speaking on it. Councillor Ponaturai, there's no real need for you to speak on it, please. And we will put the matter to the vote. This is the amendment. We're just voting on the amendment. Thank you, councillors. We'll put the matter to the vote.
Amendment 1 to OC-00321 has been carried unanimously with 8 in favour, noting Councillor Holland is out of the room for the vote.
Thank you, Governance. We now revert to the substantive motion, which is now items 1, 2 and 3. Councillor Porter moved the item. Councillor Spencer-Teo seconded. Councillor Barry then put his amendment. Before we put the matter to the vote, is there anyone wishes to speak against it? Councillors, let's put the matter to the vote.
Substantive motion as amended, OC-00321 has been carried unanimously, 8 in favour, noting Councillor Holland was absent for the vote.
Thank you, Governance. Appreciate it. Mr. Blade, can I thank you for coming along tonight? I'm not certain that you need to be here any longer unless you'd like to stay for the remainder of the meeting. You're welcome to. But I know that, can I just for the record, but I'd like to say thank you for giving up your evening to come down here tonight. There may have been questions that only you could answer, so we very much appreciate your involvement in this process, and also to Ms Hayward for also coming along this evening. So thank you. Councillors, can I just ask, Governors, can we ask for Councillor Holland to return? Oh, we've sent.
So hopefully he hasn't left his phone behind.
We'll just pause for a moment. Thank you, Jeff. We'll just pause for a moment whilst we wait for Councillor Holland to return to the floor. Take your time, Councillor Holland. We're in no hurry. Okay, thank you, councillors. Councillor Holland, just so you know, the previous matter was actually carried as a matter of the public record. Councillor Barry amended to remove item 4. Nevertheless, having said that, you weren't able to return to the room because we'd already commenced debate and you had left the room and declared a financial interest, so it didn't make any difference to the vote. I hope you're okay with that, but that was the ruling at the time and nobody dissented. So we now move on to notice of motion 002 of 21, long-term financial plan external review process. That matter is hopefully on the screen now. I'll need a mover and a seconder. I'll move it myself from the floor. And a seconder, please, for that matter. A mover? A seconder, sorry? Seconder? Councillor Holland. Thank you. Councillors, I won't take up much of your time on this, only that it has been raised by a number of us recently that in keeping with what we have been told about the current financial position of the City of Canning, that it would be, I think, fortuitous of us to ask for an external company to provide some oversight into the financials of the city, and particularly in relation to the long-term financial plan from 2017 to 2027, and just around the decisions that have been made by both the administration and the council, and to look at making findings and recommendations on exactly how we can ensure that we maintain our current financial pathway, which is our long-term financial plan. I think at the moment, whilst I sincerely appreciate and respect the views of our administration, I think at some stage, from as far as public perception goes, some in the community may feel that that would be akin to marking your own homework. So having worked in audit areas in state government over the last decade, I really do believe that there's an opportunity for us here to hand this body of work over for an independent review, so that a report can come back to council and we can actually have a look at those findings and recommendations, and they can inform our long-term financial plan, because we're now 4 years into our long-term financial plan, and it's certainly time for review. I'd also make the point with the CEO, with a new CEO to start in the next 3 months, that document, that review will actually form a key document for him or her as she takes her position, takes a position also on the best way forward to manage effectively the finances of the city. So I think it's relevant, I think it's pertinent, and I'm hoping it's in step with what council might like to see. So I can only say that the scope here in front of you was put together by myself in consultation, obviously with the city's administration, with Director Kane, but also that I sought advice from the principal auditor of a very large state government department, who has also worked for a very long time for the Auditor General, and took his advice, and this is, we feel, the way forward. We believe it can be done quickly because it needs to inform our budget that we're doing, and it will be, as I said, a critical document for this council going forward. That's really all I have to say. I'd invite Councillor Holland if you'd like to say anything to speak, and if not, we'll put it to the vote. Councillor Holland.
Mr Mayor, I thought in here I can reserve the right to speak later. I'll reserve
if you'd
that
like
right.
to, yeah. Would anyone else like to speak on the matter? Councillor Ponaturi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question to start with. Starting from the bottom of the rationale on that, given the scope and the first year companies, we are going for the top 4 firms. The budget is, we only allocated $20,000. And how are you going to manage this $20,000 and the scope? So that's my sort of first question before I want to speak about this. Just want to know.
I'll ask Director Kane to address that, but I think Councillor Ponaturi, that would be a provisional sum, and obviously from his experience, Director Kane believes that that's an achievable number for the scope of the work. But I'll ask Director Kane.
Just 1 second. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that. Yeah, but I know, knowing that this is your motion, my just a question is, so if we are going to, that $20,000 is only a provision, and the scope is definitely not going to be enough, so what will be our action from there? So that's the big question mark.
I didn't quite get that. So you're saying...
So that you're saying the $20,000 is a provision?
You're saying that's not sufficient?
Not for the scope of work is given, because I sit on a few other boards, and what we pay is very
Director, I'll just
high
ask
amount. But
Director,
what certainty is there, even when you wrote the motion, as your motion? So I'm asking, what certainty is there that did we get their rates for this particular scope of work, or are we just telling them you do this and we give you the data? So these are the questions going to come up. Thank you.
Director Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As councillors know, tonight I distributed a copy of the scope of the engagement to each of you today. I hope you've had a chance to look at it. Also, that we've set a very specific time frame. We want this work done over 2, possibly 3 weeks. So we've made an initial estimate of the cost, likely cost of that at $20,000. It could come in more expensive than that. It certainly will come in under the tender threshold of $50,000. At this stage, that's our best estimate. but we'll know that when we have the response. We've chosen 3 reputable firms. They're all from the government pre-qualified tender list, and they all have a detailed experience in dealing with local government.
I don't think they're not all Big Four firms. I think the third of the firms, was it More
Australia.
More Australia? Yeah, not a Big Four firm. But anyone else have a
So
question?
just one more question. Can I just finish?
Yes, Councillor Ponturai, yep.
Thank you. So because given the time, we are asking them to do the report before end of April, because we want to get on with our long-term financial plan. Normally with the timing so tight, they're going to give us double the rate. So if anything exceeds more than $50,000, so are we happy to approve? Because given that this is very important for us. So are we agreeing on that? So just everybody is aware about it. That's why my question.
Director Kane.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Council's not setting a particular quantum of this. So it's not a budgetary decision. It requires, for instance, an absolute majority. Council's, this is a notice of motion coming from an elected member. If it's adopted, said the staff will proceed down that path. We've set a very specific time frame and a specific task. Remember, they're not creating something from new. They're reviewing something and determining what happened. So the informing documents that we need to provide need to be well documented prior to that. This is not a comprehensive audit where they're going to go through every line transaction in the city, test whether transactions were done correctly or not. This is looking at the parameters of the long-term financial plan, what happened to those parameters, why income or expenditure varied from that, and then provide some guidance back to support what we've already been telling you.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it doesn't go far enough for me, so I won't be supporting this in its current form. For the last couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, I have been outspoken in regards to, after listening to Mr. Kane come in and make some startling revelations about the way our budget is and some of the anomalies that he has identified through our balance sheets. I have said the only way to clear this up is to have an audit. And by that, if we're looking at spending $20,000, then I think that $20,000 would be far better spent on an audit, a forensic audit of our books for the last couple of years to give us a more accurate and not just rely on assumptions when we have 2 people well qualified. That previously last year we had a team of financial experts that were managing our books, and they were ticked off by our auditor. And then Mr. Kane comes in and over a period of a few weeks has analysed and made findings that I think for all councillors we should question, and those questions should result in having an audit of the books so we know exactly what the state of our balance sheets are before the next CEO comes on board. And I think with $20,000 we would be better off looking at maybe a smaller firm who could have the books for 2 or 3 weeks and provide the council with a comprehensive review of our books, which would put us in a far better position to make informed decisions going forward and to look at our projections. But they would also, it also would mean that we would be getting another opinion, qualified opinion, on the state of our assets, our infrastructure, our depreciation, and all these other things that Mr. Kane has given his opinion on as well. So that's what my view is at this stage. So I can't support it in its current form, and I just think the money would be better spent on getting a far more comprehensive audit done.
Thank you, Councillor. Director Kane, can I just ask just your, please just explain in relation to Councillor Sweeney's comments about a forensic audit of our books. We have an annual audit. What is being proposed by Councillor Sweeney different to the annual audit that's undertaken, and what would be a potential cost there? Because I'm not absolutely certain I understand fully what it is that he's asking, but if I could ask your opinion, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Earlier this night, Mr. Tesh Dwala went through the financial results for last financial year. He put before you a series of numbers. One side said this is council's adopted budget, and then he presented to you an outcome that this is what actually happened. you would have noticed that the budget and the actuals were two different things. Now, the auditors came through and said, yes, those numbers are right. But the auditors don't go back and say, well, why did you vary from the budget? So forensically, to go back each of the last 4 years, your auditors would have given us a statement saying this chartered, the accounts presented are factually correct. But they don't come back and say to you, well, why didn't you achieve your budget? So the idea of then looking back at this, which is what your budget is just a series of numbers in a long-term financial plan, is to come back and say to council, why did we vary our income? Why did we vary our expenditure? The numbers are the numbers, there's nothing wrong with them. But this is a high order analysis that says, right, well, your income varied because your rates were different, or your fees and charges are different, or other elements were different. That's what the accounting firm will come back and provide. No audit is going to come back and undo what has already been done in terms of findings as it's done, because they're accurate. But you need to know, why was the difference? Why did we start with a $960,000 deficit this year and end up with 1.17 million? But it's not just that deficit this year, it's the other years, and it's the deficit we're currently in 2020-21, which is yet to be finalised. I think that's the benefit, Mr Mayor, of actually having someone independent come back and provide that analysis.
Thanks, Director Kane. Anyone else wish to speak either for it or against it? Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll remain seated because I didn't get me a hard copy, but that's another story for another day. Similarly, I'm of the same mind as Councillor Sweeney. I mean, I'm not quite sure. Essentially, I think this is a review question through Mr Mayor to Mr Kane. This is a review. It's not anything more than that. Is that correct? And is there any statutory regulation that you could note that says that we have to do it, apart from, well, I'll say your want?
Director Kane.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just waiting for the chair to give me authority to speak.
Sorry.
Yes, there's no statutory requirement to undertake this review. There is a statutory requirement to adopt a new long-term financial plan.
Yes.
So when your existing long-term financial plan, our existing long-term financial plan varies so much from what it said, it doesn't provide a good starting point to continue a new plan. So one of the reasons for doing this type of review is transactionally to look exactly what happened and explain why, but also to give you some confidence that when you adopt a new long-term financial plan, that the projections should be better in it than contained in the last one. Now, I've given you reasons in my explanation as to why I think that there have been variation, but I fully support the idea of having somebody independently come in and give you the confidence that what I'm saying or others are saying, including Mr Atawala, is correct. That's a very good thing to do. Independent confirmation that that's correct. But once you know it's correct, it's about what you do with that information to improve the next long-term financial plan.
Okay, so I also note that and I'm sure these questions won't go on my speaking time. I also note that the LT, the long-term financial plan, is to be reviewed on an annual basis as per the current one, which I read early this morning. I just sort of think that given that there's been the first two we've had has been some gnashing of teeth over just what councillors were looking for in the way of information from the perspective of just what happened. I mean, I note in here the email to Councillor Ponaturi. It says the independent review is required to understand the budget model used by the city to produce the long-term financial plan.
I just need a question here at some stage.
No, I'm speaking against.
Oh, you're speaking against it. Okay, yes, I thought you were asking a question.
No, I said, please don't take the question and answer off my...
Keep going, you're up.
Review and confirm the city's findings for the reasons behind the variations in the operating of capital revenue and expenditure, where departures from the principles of the long-term financial plan resulted in significant variations in expenditure and revenue due to the decision-making of council and administration, review the city's findings on the rationale and processes and these provide commentary on the impact to the city's current financial long-term position. These are some of the questions that we've been asking over a number of weeks, and well, as far as I can see, to my knowledge, we haven't received those. There's a number of them in there, but we seem to be telling the people who are supposed to be doing the audit what to do. And I mean, there's one other section here, 3.4. This is the city saying, we propose to have an entry meeting before the commencement of the project, a closing meeting to discuss and finalise the draft report and findings and recommending a final report to council at the SIB. Now, that sort of in some way suggests to me that I'm not quite sure how independent that is. The other point that I would make is that once again we get back to, I say, the new CEO, whoever that is going to be, should have input into this as well. I understand what you're saying about what you think is the need for the new long-term financial plan, but essentially during budget conversations or workshops that we do have, councillors are also asked for input into budget matters. This seems to be only looking at it from one angle. There is not another option that's provided to some, well, maybe other councillors who wish to have a different option. We're sort of being stuck, as I see it, at this stage with what we've got in this notice of motion. Like I said, I think a new CEO should be sitting in and having some input into this for their next term. We have workshops on the 27th of April, May the 19th, June the 5th, and what I can see, that I think is we're basically doing here tonight is the seal of approval for whatever is going to be said prior to any budget further workshops. And I mean, for me, like I said, it seems like signing a blank cheque, and for me, I won't be supporting the motion in its current, as it currently sits.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak either for or against it before I put the matter to the vote and close it? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
I'll be speaking against it, but for completely different reasons. The only part I really like about this is part 5, as it sets the parameters and we're moving forward towards a solution. As I said at the OCM, I'm not all surprised that this budget position is so poor. We went into this budget knowing full well that there was a $2.1 million deficit from 2019 financial year and a $1 million deficit from the 2020 financial year being carried forward. This was covered in the first budget workshop back in April last year. Our long-term financial plan had us receiving $72 million in rates for the 2021 financial year. Though freezing rates and offering concessions and waiving interest, over $4.4 million was foregone in revenue. We were told this in budget workshop number 3 in June. Add the financial impacts of COVID and the increases in expenditure, there's your explanation right there. It's not complex accounting, it's pretty simple math. Unless Gary, Steve or anyone had a crystal ball, no one had any idea COVID was going to hit. We had no idea staff would resign or that we'd be making redundancies due to COVID or restructures. However, if we'd stuck to the long-term financial plan, we could have remained strong and resilient against COVID. However, we've become a victim to it. With the depreciation and asset renewal, I had many conversations with Gary, both as a president of the Ross Moyne Kindy and as an elected member. One example of this was many of the funds, was when funds needed to replace things like the roof at the Kindy, it was coming from operating budgets, and that was Warren's budget. That wasn't coming from reserves. Now, I'm not a qualified accountant, but what that's telling me is no money is being put aside. When I joined this council, the budget deficits were already there. You can't put money in reserves that you don't have. It's just impossible. You need a budget surplus in order to do this. And for as far as I can see, there's never been a war chest waiting for the rainy day. And it's evident the state of our assets and buildings around Canning. Spending $20,000 or more to have someone come in and tell us what we already know is throwing good money after bad, in my opinion. I'm all for drawing the line in the sand, stop trying to look for someone to throw under the bus, move forward, learn from this and focus on a solution. The horse, it's died, it's dead, it ain't coming back. In my opinion, spending $20,000 more of our ratepayers' dollars to have PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte or more come in and flog it one more time just to be sure is a waste of time, money and resources, in my opinion. As I said, I like point 5 as it is because it's working towards a solution. But as a whole, I can't go back in time. I don't think it's going to change anything. So I'm sorry, I can't support it.
Thank you. Councillor Holland, you reserved your right to speak. Would you like to speak now?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I put the motion so we could have debate on it just because it looked like it wasn't going to be debated, so I'm glad I did. I've got a... Sorry? I've got a couple of concerns regarding this motion as well, although I can see the overall point of it. But what worries me that whoever we get in company A, B or C will come in and just be reviewing what we give them to review. And that worries me a little bit. I can understand, although I can see Councillor Sweeney's request for an audit, and I can understand the audit is just going to go back and find out the facts and figures that we've had before. As far as I know what an audit goes, and I'm not anywhere trying to admit that I'm a bloody expert at this. The $20,000 that Councillor Spencer Teo mentioned being spent here, I think could be spent better as well. I'm really worried that this review won't tell us anything we don't know. I think Mr. Kane has put things in which I think in plain speak English to me, well, personally, which I've started to understand a lot more than I did before. And I can understand the bad situation that we are in. The long-term financial plan needs addressing. We have got something to have it addressed with. I also agree with Councillor Barry that if we're going to go down to some review like this, that a new CEO should be involved. Nothing against you, obviously, CEO, because you'll be gone in 2 months. We're talking about a long-term financial plan, which is for how long? Oh, sorry, 3 months, sorry. Yeah, obviously no disrespect at all, that's not the point of this. There's one thing that does worry me though, if we did wait for the new CEO to 3 months or whatever it is the timeline going to be too long? So if we waited for a new CEO to come in here and then we put a motion like this in, then I think the horse is bolted, as it were, and we've waited too long to start grappling with this situation, as in point 5 that Councillor Spencer Teo mentioned. The line in the sand, I'll agree with that. I think it needs to be drawn now and we get on with it. We had a pretty frank discussion the other night, which I was quite part of. I had my say, and I'm happy I've had my say, but I would think... I personally think this... Sorry, did you... I personally think this motion is not going to achieve anything than telling us what we've got already known. So I can't support that in this. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Pontura.
Sorry, Councillor. Can I suggest a procedural motion on this? As everyone sort of agreeing this paying to the firm for $20,000, we are not going to get any information. I think as I've been this morning well engaged with the Director Kane, and I did send an emails to copy to everyone, elected members and the directors. I think what everyone wants to see something like tangible, because we are not able to see what it is. That's one of the things that I want to see, where the director could provide us the identified risk and opportunities table in this long-term financial plan. So if we have 10 risk items and 5 opportunities items, then we could talk about how do we convert this some of the risk into opportunities, also having those table with a monetary value. So my procedural motion is all about, Mr. Mayor, asking the Director Kane to produce us this identified risk and opportunities table in the long-term financial plan, and let's work together and move on, and then
That's
we can...
not a procedural motion.
No, won't? Okay, it would be amendment?
I was going to say you should know.
Issue
I
of
mean,
amendment?
they're standing orders. I mean, that's not a procedural motion.
Okay.
So you can put a motion, if this
Amend-
is defeated tonight, I mean, you can bring a motion yourself
Yep.
to the next council meeting. I think what will happen tonight, and I'll ask Director Kane to comment, but obviously if this is not supported tonight, well then it doesn't occur, and I'm talking about an external review, but the city here will continue. We've had a wonderful workshop the other night. I mean, I got a lot out of it as well, Lindsay, and I think we all have, and we'll continue with those workshops. The review is still being undertaken internally. It just means we won't be spending the money externally, so it'll still happen. Director Kane.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, yeah, and the intent is, if this doesn't proceed tonight, the staff will still continue to do the workshops and other analysis with you. My intent is for each future workshop to build. So the next workshop we were intending to bring is come back and go through the strategies that council have adopted and look at what's funded and what's not funded. And there are quite clearly, there are gaps there. And then we make decisions around that. Well, are we going to keep these strategies or are we not? If we are going to keep them, how do we fund them? The intent is also to go through income in a lot more detail than we've done in the past. The intent to come back to expenditure is to give you a level of confidence too, the depreciation schedules, the depreciation of assets and other things. There is a lot more confidence around what's making up your budget. And not treating this as accounting 101, but to have you intimately involved and understand what the budget actually then consists of.
Thank you. Look, I propose to probably put the matter to the vote. I think that's what we will do unless anyone else feels compelled to speak on it at the moment. We had everybody so far has spoken against it, so I might just quickly close and put it to the vote. And okay with that? Councillors, just in relation to what has been said, look, I still support the motion. Over the last, couple of weeks, we have had some dealings with the city, which have been somewhat confronting and given us a grim picture of our financial position going forward. I spent the first 4 years on council under a different mayor. I did mention at the time that I would try as hard as I could to responsibly administer the finances of this council. Councillor Barry and others are saying we won't be told anything that we don't already know. I'd say that we have a clear responsibility under the Local Government Act to manage the finances of the local government responsibly, and they are not our finances. They're owned by these people sitting in the public gallery and others, including us, because we're also ratepayers. So I heard and I read the Deputy Mayor, myself and many others around this table, when we first started on this journey talking about our finances, that they didn't have confidence, or they certainly intimated they had no confidence in the city's officers, and we need an external view. We want an independent view of what's going on. Now, if that has changed, that's wonderful. But I still feel, as somebody that's worked in audit and risk management in 3 senior state government departments over the last 10 years, I've worked in audit departments, I know how they work, I know what this will actually bring, and I think it is prudent on us as councillors of the City of Canning to act as a board and seek independent advice. So I'm a little bit shocked to hear tonight at the 11th hour that nobody wants independent advice. Now, after, with a multi-million-dollar budget deficit, $20,000 is such an extraordinary amount of money that we wouldn't spend it to get a second opinion and ask for the findings and recommendations of people that are professional in this field and subject matter experts. Why wouldn't we go to a leading accounting firm to ask for a second opinion? I think we owe it to our community, and I also think it's the expectation of our community that that money would be well spent. So I'm not going to beg you to support this motion. This council can defend its position if they choose not to get an independent view, that's okay. But I will be voting in favour of the recommendation, because I think as a board of directors it's prudent for us to do it, because we have a responsibility under the Act to do it. And whilst I fully respect Director Kane and the work of his directors, I think it's time, with what we have been confronted with, that we seek an independent view of our finances. So if you choose to vote against it, that's entirely up to you. We had an opportunity. Councillors, just put the matter to the vote.
Motion nom-002-21 has been lost. 4 in favour, 5 against. Those councillors voting against, Councillors Bain, Barry, Ponathurai, Spencer Teo and Sweeney.
Thank you, councillors. We move on to confidential matters, of which there are none this evening. At closure, we'd like to close tonight's meeting. There being no further business, I now declare the meeting closed at 8:40 p.m. on the dot. I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance. Thank you, Sian, for staying the evening, and thanks to those members of the public who did stay behind. Very much appreciated. The meeting is now formally closed.